He said, I hated it. And he's like, you're the greatest tennis player who ever lived, and you hated it. I mean, why did you play? And he goes, because I had the misfortune of picking up a tennis ball and a racket when I was 4 years old and hitting it. And my dad said, oh, this boy has potential.
Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I am Lucas.
I'm Erik.
Lucas and Erik are licensed professional counselors, and today we are talking about, I've already forgotten the
I've
title.
already forgotten. No, we're starting off on like a mini
That was not the title.
A mini series. 5 things dads do that push their sons away.
Well, I guess you could say that, forgetting things that are important to your sons could
be
be
one of
something
now
that
it's
is
six
gonna
No,
push
that's
them
no,
away.
no, that's number 4. We can't
okay.
get ahead of ourselves.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so number 1, and this is like, I don't know, Erik, did you find this as a list or did you make this list kind
I
of
made
yourself?
this list.
You were kind of like
There are a
looking up
couple of different
information
things.
and then kind of put things together. Yeah, so here, this will be like a mini series.
Okay,
Right? So
I like
episode
it.
1, mini series. Expecting their son to be better. So we've done a podcast on like expectations for children, and this is kind of like a variation on that with a kind of more limited subset of parent-child demographics, right? So we're talking about dudes.
It's right. And for generations, it's a part of our country's fabric and history and culture. You want your kids, you want to provide the kids the opportunity that they can do better than what you did, so it's like this kind of step up piece. And one of the problems that it's become is how much pressure you're putting into do better, and how much of a driving force that can then become. You know?
And also there's the like I heard that a lot, but then one of my questions or things as a kid, I'm thinking like what does that mean?
What does better
do
mean?
Better financially, do better and enjoy life more, do better and do a career I want to do versus something, there's so many different things.
So you
that
felt
could
the
mean.
pressure to do better, but you were uncertain what it meant.
What does do better mean?
Well, and a lot of times things happen is when you get a cultural piece like this, it starts off with a lot of parents who are really working hard to make ends meet, and they're handling 1 to 2 jobs, or someone is handling, 1, 2, 3 jobs to be able to provide. And you want them to have your kids to have the opportunities that they can have. Right. And so financially and monetarily, it's kind of a do better. You get to the next step, and then you have an easier life because you've got these pieces that we worked hard to give you. Right. And that'll just be nicer and easier for you. The problem is it never gets reevaluated. So now the definition of do better, which could be, what you're talking about, Josh, it's just this push of do better. Right. Andre,
I'm taller than you. That means I won.
Right. Andre Agassi, one of the greatest, if not the greatest tennis player to ever play. He was interviewed by a reporter one time, and the reporter said, you've done all, he listed all these things that he had done. And he said, you must really like tennis. And Andre said, no, I hated every minute of it.
And still did.
He said, I hated it. And he's like, you're the greatest tennis player who ever lived, and you hated it. I mean, why did you play? And he goes, because I had the misfortune of picking up a tennis ball and a racket when I was 4 years old and hitting it. And my dad said, oh, this boy has potential. And he drove me. He goes, I'm not blaming him, but he was a driving force for me to be the tennis player that I became. Yeah. And it was always, he wanted better for me type thing. And the reporter said, well, now don't you and Steffi, because he's married to Steffi Graf, don't you guys have, 2 kids? And he goes, yeah, we have 2 boys. And he goes, well, what are your expectations for them? He said, my expectations for them is that they get to try the different things they want to try. We're not pushing them into tennis. We're not pushing them into any sport. Which is, because he says, I have one playing football and one was playing a different sport.
I remember talking to you about this and kind of hashing it out in my head of like, well, how do you get someone who is like the best whatever in whatever their chosen field is, right? So like pushing them from age 4 to be the best is one route to get there, but he's literally saying like, please no, right? And so it's like, okay, well, what set of circumstances would there be where you get somebody who ends up at that level of achievement through a healthier series of circumstances? And I think it was you who said it, but it's like, if there is a person, so like Andre himself as a child or as he was growing up, like if they're driven to want to be better, you can support that without grinding them into the dust.
Yes.
Right. And so like if they want to work to achieve, they will become great. And then you can support that without turning them into gravel.
Right. When I showed an interest in baseball, I wanted to be a pitcher and I wanted to be a shortstop. And my parents, because at the time there was this neat thing that came out. It was called a pitchback. And
like a trampoline for a baseball, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It had the box there, and you could aim for it, and it basically sent it back to you, and not through the kitchen window.
It's an improvement.
A big improvement, and so it allows you to be able to practice by yourself, as a pitcher and a shortstop, because when it's coming back, I can field it in the way a shortstop
field your own.
I can field
your own
thing.
pitching, too,
right?
bro.
Yeah.
And so I would go out there. They bought it for me, and I would go out there and put in 15 to 30 minutes a night in the backyard, and I would work with myself with that. Now, my dad might come out and just watch, or he was doing other things. My mom would watch through the kitchen window sometimes, but they never pushed me. They would encourage me, but it was never, hey, you have to do this and you have to do that, and now let me tell you how to do this. And I mean, my dad was not an athlete, when he went up through school and through high school. And so that may have helped, and my mom wasn't either, so there wasn't this, we don't like sports, but there wasn't this, oh, let me tell you what you're doing wrong type thing. My dad would say, listen, I don't know how to tell you how to do this differently, but, I could probably find somebody who did, or how can you talk to your coach? And so there was always those pieces. One of the things that I find with parents and families that I see is when you do have a child who, like this, and, by the way, the great Joe Montana, the quarterback, he did the very same thing. He just went out in his backyard, he got a football, and he started throwing it through the rope swing. And when he got dead eye on a rope swing, and he started this, I think, in junior high, he then, of course, talked to his parents about adding another rope swing, and then he would swing them, and then he would go to throw it through the two when they lined up. And when he got really good at that, he added a third one. And so he has 3 rope swings going, and he's fine-tuning his hand-eye coordination to put that ball through there, which if you've ever seen NFL tape on the balls he would throw and how they would go in between defenders and just find themselves in Jerry Rice's hands, it's just amazing. Nobody pushed him to do that.
Right. And so if we're talking about expectations, our title being you could push your son away by driving him. It's like you were talking about Andre Agassi. What was his relationship like with his dad? I would wonder.
Not great.
Yeah. So and then so like if we're talking about Joe Montana, who was not pushed as hard, what was his relationship like with his dad? We're going to speculate that he had a better relationship because he wasn't being
pushed, and compressed.
Rammed through a wood chipper to become a quarterback.
Right. And so the key, because you may have some, kids, as they're growing up and they're like, I need someone to push me. It really folds back into your relationship with your child. I was mentioning that families and kids that I see, one soccer player that I had, parents put a lot of money and a lot of training into the development of this young lady as a goalie. And from what I understand, she was good. All of a sudden, she got tired of being in the goal. She wanted to be out on the field with her peers.
Oh, because when you're on the soccer field,
Yeah.
the goalie is like unique.
Everyone
else is out on the field and you're
alone.
not. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're not. A lot of times, the game, if your forwards and strikers are really good, it's at the other end of the field.
The ball's over there.
It's
right.
just-
Yeah. A bored goalie is a good goalie.
It's a good goalie.
But
yeah, and so she was like, I want to try other positions.
I want the
And-
ball.
Yeah, and it was met with some resistance of we spent a lot of money, and that's going to be one of our biggest struggles as parents is as you're spending that money to support them, one of the things that we have to remember is, okay, very few kids are going to hit the big time professionally with sports.
Right.
It's very rarely going to be their
very
lifetime
rarely.
occupation.
Yes.
Even probably college, is probably
Yeah.
hard to attain, right?
College is a much easier thing to be able to aim for.
But it just gets harder and harder the farther you go, right?
Well, and now that we're in an age where, this upcoming fall, we're going to start seeing paid college players in different ways. It may become even harder, to hit the college field, and be on the team harder than it was. But the bigger picture is what does the enjoyment, what does the involvement, what does the training, what does the development? I mean, if you played sports from the time when I basically was in T-ball, it was always about work ethic, teamwork, cooperation, the fundamentals, communication, these 5 core values.
Your coach would be proud. You named him off ding, ding,
Right?
ding.
Yeah, that's how many years
And
of
those are
sports.
portable.
Right. And those go
There
to
you
different
go.
things. Plus, this young lady, I mean, let's say she doesn't go to college. She has, these skills that she can be able to work with and play with either for enjoyment, relaxation, working with kids sometime, working with her own kids. I mean, there's a lot of different things, ways that can just continue to fold over into her life. She was talking to me about how do I get better? And we talked about Joe Montana and, Pele wasn't born Pele. There had to be some work in there. And so it'll be interesting to see, what she decides to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it almost sounds like there's pushing for be better and then there's supporting. And the supporting more follows the kid's interest and the pushing sometimes maybe more follows our interest as a parent. And for me, my parents really wanted me to do sports. My dad had always done sports. They put me out there in T-ball. I'm out messing around, not even knowing the ball's coming. And they pushed for a bit, but then eventually they realized this isn't what this kid wants to do. What I wanted to do was completely nothing my dad was interested in. I wanted to do, there's these new things called computers and there's lights and electronics and all of that. And so they couldn't even necessarily push me in that because they didn't know enough about it, but they could support me. And
your
they
parents' in
took
sports.
me to things. Yeah. And then that ended up being way better than having someone over my shoulder going, no, do better, do this, do that, do that,
Do you know what I heard one of our employees was taking their kid to was the national cubing competition.
Oh.
I didn't even know what that was. I'm like,
Me neither.
Rubik's
Rubik's
Cube.
Cube. Yeah, that's awesome.
What? And they're going to nationals?
Yep.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would have to imagine, and I don't know anything about solving a
Yeah.
Rubik's Cube, but I would imagine that it takes
I do.
intelligence and perseverance
And they
and
can do it
dedication
quick.
and practice. And as you were talking about those skills being transferable,
Right.
So if your kid's good at whatever it is, it probably required dedication and discipline and practice and hard work and some sacrifice. And yay!
Or you just take it apart and put it back together.
Well, the stickers on those Rubik's Cubes,
Peel
if you
them
pull
off.
them
Yeah, but
off,
if
you can
do that, they don't stick as much, and then people figure it out. Yeah, I did that one too.
I did that one too.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, those kids are very impressive. And
it is.
Sure.
I don't know why something about that piqued my interest, and I got a Rubik's Cube about a couple months ago, and I don't even know. It takes me like 20 minutes. So I'm impressed.
But you can solve it.
Yeah, eventually.
See, you're ahead of like 75% of the population.
Well, I have to watch
by
a bunch of
solving
videos
it.
to do that. But yeah.
Oh, I see.
In decades, I have not gotten more than 3 sides.
Okay.
I have a Rubik's Cube over there
Yeah.
in my office that sits there. It's more like, see what I can't do?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, see,
And
and
it's
those
even
kids
with-
would put us all to shame because they're just like,
Those kids, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Right. So we're trying to talk about a balance between like pushing your children too hard, which will cause them to like burn out, crash, and
Right.
explode.
Right.
And then I don't know what the opposite end would be. I guess the opposite end would be like not pushing them in any way at all.
Yeah.
Which
But
hasn't been
being supportive.
which hasn't been a part of our conversation, but like the balance of like expectations and
Yeah.
structure, which will help get people places without like, putting the nitrous on too hard and burning the engine.
Right.
out.
And I think another piece, and some of this just comes from my own personal life. Like I know my dad always did business stuff. And obviously in the same way of this conversation, he wants me to do better than he did. He also self-admittedly, probably worked too much, spent too much time doing stuff. And so I'm trying my personal value. I want to be a little differently balanced now that I have a son and I want to spend more time there. And so it's like I still want to achieve certain things, but then to me, doing better also maybe means I have a little more time at home, even if I don't do better from
Make
a
more
business.
money.
Right. And so I think that's always a big play too, is like, you need to just do better at one thing, or could it be do better in a different way?
Have you heard the story of the old guy with the fishing boat? No. So there's this old guy with the fishing boat, and someone tells him, like, you're only out on the water for like 6 hours a day, and like, why don't you like work harder, and you could work like 12 hours a day, and then you could like hire employees.
Yeah.
Right. And he goes like, well, wait a second. Like, if I work really hard so that I can do what? So that I can retire and work less, which I'm doing right now. Like, and so it's like what you were saying of
Right.
why would I burn myself out for, in this story, it's like burn myself out for 15 years
Yeah.
so that I can retire at the end, or I can steadily do what I'm doing now in a
Right.
more kind of balanced way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a very fascinating, thing.
Well, get back to kind of the pushing a little bit, because like my parents, even in grade school, were like every semester, which there were quarters at that time, we had to be involved in something.
Yeah.
Right.
We could be a sport, it could be band, it could be a club,
Right.
it could be
Could have been chess club.
Could have been chess club. You have to once you pick something, you must be in it for that quarter. But at the end of that, you can choose to stop. You can reevaluate it, except band. Band costed money to rent the instruments, so that was a year commitment because it was with the school. And, even private lessons, came with that piece. And if we weren't going to pick, because I was like, oh, okay, I just won't pick.
I just won't pick.
Yeah, well, they were going to pick for us.
Chess club
Yeah.
it was.
No, it would be more like home ec.
That was an extracurricular you could have done.
Oh, believe me, they would have found it.
They would have found it. It would have been just with your mom in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, it would have involved. They would have found the club or made the club. Okay, I'm not kidding. There's no way I was going to let them be the picker.
Would have been
And
typing club.
there's a whole story about that.
No, is that another podcast? Typing club.
It could be because it can
put
show, because
put notes.
there are times where parents do need to show some intentionality in
Right.
what they really want and know is going to be good for their kids. You know, this whole typing club thing was one of those things, and like I said, there's a whole story behind that.
I think it's in the manual. I think
It
you
is in
wrote
the
it
manual.
So if you
Yeah.
if you're really itching, go read the manual and find Eric's typing class.
Yeah, it was really quite intentional, as spearheaded by my mom.
Right.
And
But it got you to where you are today, right?
It did. She told me, you're not going to like this, but you're going to thank me because it's going to give you everything you need for a lifetime.
Is
And
that what she told you when she told you to eat your lima beans too?
No, that is not. She did not tell me that with the lima beans. That was completely different. And no, I did not eat them. The dogs wouldn't eat them, and they killed the plants. It's that
Also,
I hid them
in the manual.
Yes, it's in there. But there's this part of being able to support your kids when they show an interest in different things, you can push your kids a little bit to help them see where their interests are. I, kind of pushed my son to do some soccer, to do some basketball. And that's where he kind of found out that, I'm not really one to be interested in this, and that was okay. He was soccer goalie, and his way of doing goalie was they would bring the ball down and he would run to the other side of the goal. They would score and he would congratulate them. Score! Good job! You did it!
So he needed to be on the cheerleading team, not the goalie.
Well, I'm not sure that would have worked either, because when they passed him the ball, he picked it up and ran all over the field, which is what he did in basketball too. So he wanted the interactions. He also has Asperger's and some pieces, but it just was not going to work for him.
Not going to be his thing.
No. And so we didn't double down with, private lessons or big expectations. He had two cousins who were good soccer players, and they needed someone to, as they're practicing, go get the balls. And so he was okay with that.
Yeah.
It worked out.
All right. So we have lots more in this little mini segment, and I think it's in the title. 5 things.
Yep.
So there's 4 more if you can count, which, I don't know if I can. I have a master's degree in counseling. That doesn't mean I can count.
True.
So we'll have to get back to this.
Yeah. So definitely make sure to check out the future episodes. If you're not subscribed wherever you're listening or watching this, make sure you do that so that you can hear those. And then definitely go to the App Store, either in Android or Google, and search Empowering Choices Parenting. Download our app where we have courses and more podcasts and other material like this. And we'll see you on the next episode.
And go buy your kid a Rubik's Cube.
Score!
Yes.